Welcome to Wellness with John. I'm John Peters, a therapist who's been in practice for 25 years. And this channel is my opportunity to share a variety of resources with you to help you thrive. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about whether or not guided meditations work. The short answer is yes and no, but stay tuned and I'll explain. Okay, so in today's video, I want to talk about guided meditations and whether or not they work. And I gave the answer yes and no. And the reason for that is it depends, and it depends on what you're using them for. So let me first define what I'm talking about when I say guided meditations and why I contrast that with meditation in a different sense. Okay. Guided meditations are where you listen to an audio track and you have soothing sounds like nature sounds, or you have ocean waves, or you have music. And so during that, somebody's going to be leading you through some sort of instruction to pay attention to this or that, or imagine this or imagine that. And that's a guided meditation. So an example of that actually is not really meditative that I use in my practice is when I lead people through or have them listen to a body scan. So you might have relaxing music and you listen to it when you're, prone, like lying on a bed. And then the voice is going to guide you through paying attention to different parts of the body. Sometimes people listen to guided meditations that instruct you to do the breath in a certain way. So breathe deeply, let the breath be slow, hold your breath for a little bit, then exhale, and different things like that. Okay. So people use guided meditations a lot. There are a bajillion of them out there. If you do a search here in YouTube, you're going to find quite a large number of guided meditations. And some on topics too, like guided meditations for chronic pain, things like that. But they absolutely do work if your goal is to use them for their being soothing, for being relaxing. Sometimes people listen to them to go to sleep. Sometimes people listen to them to kind of enter into a more diffuse state with their emotions or with a challenging situation so that they just feel more calm and at ease. And I think that guided meditations are really, really good for that type of thing. You might have encountered them if you've used one of the self-help apps like Calm or Happify, right? By the way, I'm not sponsored by any brand or product. I'm sponsored by me. So things that I mention in my videos are things that I just genuinely think are good ideas. Some of the things I mention in my videos and I put links to are affiliate links, but not always. But anyway, Calm and Happify are two popular self-help apps that do include guided meditations as part of what they offer. But in any case, you can't hurt yourself with them. You might get bored with them, or they might not do what you like. I think usually people find guided meditations helpful if the background music or background noise is something that they can relate to and that they find relaxing and soothing as opposed to annoying. And the other thing that is a big determining factor is whether or not the voice, quality of the voice that's in the guided meditation is one that you like, and also whether or not the pacing of just the prosody of how is the person speaking to you, so how the person's delivery fits with your state of mind or not. Okay, so you can poke around and experiment with those. If you want to try guided meditations, I tend to suggest two things. One is poke around YouTube because there are so many. The other thing is try the free app Insight Timer, INSIGHT Timer. I'll put a link to that below too. That one's totally free. There is a paid version, but you don't need it. So get the free one. That one has something like 100,000 guided meditations on it, and you can browse in different categories like audio tracks for sleep and relaxation, different things like that. So that's one to try out if you want to experiment with listening to guided meditations. But when I say that guided meditations don't work, what I'm referring to is certain purposes where we use the word meditation. In my mind, guided meditations are not the best way to pursue certain goals. And one of the things that I use meditation or forms of meditation for in my practice is mindfulness practices, which we lump into the general category of meditation. And so in mindfulness practices, often the reason that we're suggesting that is because we want the person to be more in a state of acceptance or equanimity. And by the way, I'm going to make a video here soon on acceptance and equanimity. And if you're watching this video at the time that I've already made that video, I'll put a link up here to that one because that one's going to be on acceptance and equanimity. But acceptance and equanimity have to do with being in a more neutral toned state, even if the elements of our experience are not absolutely neutral. So meaning not being apathetic and checked out and flat, but being in what we call a more cognitively diffuse state. So meaning I can stay stable while I am noticing that I am having certain reactive experiences or I'm noticing certain things. So I can see the wall, I can see the desk, I can see the microphone. Those are statements about my perceptions, and I am remaining neutral regardless of whether I really love the wall or hate the color it's painted or whatever. A cognitively diffuse state is one where one can have a healthy type of detachment from the self and the experiences of the self in order to work with those experiences. And the reason that we aim toward cognitive diffusion and the states of acceptance and equanimity, which are two terms for the same thing, is that we want to be able to work with things constructively. When we get fused, so the opposite of cognitive diffusion is fusion. When we're fused, we're taking the mental ball and running with it. So he's a jerk. We're fully consumed with the anger at the person and the thing that they did and that they're a jerk and everything, rather than I am someone who is noticing that that person is being a jerk, right? So there's a difference between fusion and diffusion in terms of our cognitive state. In order to work with things the way that we tend to in therapy and counseling and coaching, is we want to promote a more neutral stance toward the phenomena in our experience in order to work with them constructively. We use mindfulness techniques to both promote the actual state of acceptance. So meaning if I am mindful, I'm more likely to have my brain currently in this moment in a state of acceptance. Therefore, I can work with things more constructively. And if we practice things like mindful breathing, we actually train the brain in order to be more in a state of acceptance and equanimity. It's like a brain fitness effect. So like if I go to the gym and I want my bicep to be stronger so that I'm able to do curls with bigger weights, right? So a focused, targeting fitness exercise on a particular muscle group, then I do curls with a moderate amount of weight. If I do curls with too much weight, I'll injure my arm. If I do curls with too little weight, I won't get the fitness effect because I'm not getting enough challenge when I do the exercise. So a moderate middle amount of challenge in the exercise then produces the fitness effect for the targeted exercise on the targeted muscle group. So that's the physical exercise analogy of working out the brain. So when we do mindfulness exercises, we're actually providing a moderate amount of challenge that causes the brain to undergo some changes that are actually very beneficial changes, because they're changes in the parts of the brain that have to do with having perceptions in that state of acceptance and working with things in a less fused and reactive way. We literally change our brain through certain practices. And this is why I say that guided meditations don't work as well as other things, because when you're in a relaxed state listening to a guided meditation, you are not facing a lot of mental challenge. So whatever the sounds are that you're hearing, whatever the voice is having you pay attention to or do, it's a very low level, passive kind of experience and not with any particular challenge typically. Therefore, the brain does not respond with that fitness effect that I'm talking about. But when we're doing things like mindfulness exercises, there is a moderate amount of challenge. That moderate challenge actually facilitates the brain fitness effect. Let me give you a little exercise to do with me right now so that you understand what I'm talking about. Okay. What I would like you to do is just a very brief amount of mindful breathing along with me. Right. So even though I'm guiding you through this, we're not going to count this as a guided meditation because we're not listening to music and I'm not inviting you to be in a real passive mode. I'm going to ask you to do something that's more active along the lines of mindful breathing in the ways that I was just talking about. So just be relaxed. You're sitting down or you're standing up or you're lying down. Posture doesn't matter. But I want you to turn your attention into your body. Pay attention to the chest. Pay attention to the belly. They move when you breathe, and you can just pay attention to that movement. The air goes in and out of your nose and or mouth when you're breathing, so I want you to pay attention to that sensation as well. If you prefer one over the other, then focus there, but those are all the things we tend to notice when we're breathing. So we're going to notice the in-breath every time we breathe in. We're going to notice the out-breath and what that feels like every time we breathe out. So we're paying attention to the breath, okay? And then we're going to add one last element, which is inside your head. You say in to yourself silently every time you breathe in, and you say out in your head silently to yourself every time you breathe out. So just do that. In when you breathe in, out when you breathe out. So if you're doing this along with me, then you're partially noticing maybe some relaxation, some settling into paying attention to the breath, but you're probably also noticing distractions. Maybe you thought of something, oh, wait, I got to remember to call Joe later, and then you came back to in with the next in-breath. Or maybe you felt what I call impatience or awkwardness that arises. There's a tension actually that occurs when we try to do mindful breathing because our brains don't like things that are too simple. Mindful breathing is a very, very simple set of things to pay attention to. And when we change the channel to such a simple channel, our brains will resist that and it feels awkward. It actually fires off the stress response to a small degree. But we let go of that and we go back to the relaxation. So it feels a little awkward, or we have awkward thoughts about it. We get distracted. We lose track of what we're doing. We come back to in with the next in breath. And all of that is that moderate challenge. So the moderate challenge is there in the mindful breathing exercise that I just shared with you in a way that we don't get that in guided meditation. And so you could do guided meditations every night to go to sleep, and maybe you go to sleep better every night, and it's reliable. But over time, we don't tend to see that increased brain fitness effect. And what I'm talking about in terms of the brain fitness effect, again, is a change in the brain that's in effect just because we've gotten the brain fitness, not because we're doing it at any given moment, but because we're generally doing it. Similar to exercise, if I go to the gym and I do get fit, I am fit even when I'm not at the gym. I retain that fitness. So we get that from things like mindful breathing. We don't tend to get that from guided meditations. And that's why I say they don't work in some ways. And we need other types of techniques to get certain types of changes if we want to actually get certain outcomes, or especially if we want to get that sustained change in the brain circuits that have to do with being in the state of acceptance and also mediating the stress response in a more optimal way, and emotional regulation and frustration tolerance, things like that, in a more optimal way. We get that from mindfulness. And that's why we include things like mindful breathing in dialectical behavioral therapy, in acceptance and commitment therapy, and such, because we want to get those types of goals, and those are the best ways to do that. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, feel very free to hit the like button below, because that teaches YouTube who to show my videos to. And if you like the channel, feel free to subscribe if you want to be apprised of upcoming videos that I'm going to publish, and I'll keep publishing at least weekly on this channel. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in an upcoming video.